Today we're doing something a little bit different. I don't know if I'd call it real different. I mean, I feel like you're kind of an investment, kind of, you know, making money type guy, also trying to live type guy. But we're here with my friend Matt Manzari. I've known you, what, about 10 years now?
Probably 10 years, yeah.
Maybe a little bit more than 10 years. I'm going to just claim a little longer than 10 years. That way it seems more special. But I feel like we had a pretty just wild, fun time, you know, back in the day. And I remember Toe Jam.
Yeah, 2012.
2012. That was like the first small obstacle in your life, you know? Like,
yeah, that was like my first near-death accident.
First time meeting death. You've had some conversations with death.
It's funny because like I feel like I meet people who are like, oh, I had a car accident, I should have died. And it's like, some people feel like they should have died, so I was trying to err the other way, be like, no, it was fine, right? And then my doctor's like, no, it wasn't fine. And he's like, Matt, when I opened up your skull, it wasn't like a break. It was like looking into a box of Rice Krispies. You crushed or collapsed the right side of your face. And he said this common, I forget what term he used, but this pressure point that we know of as our temple. He's like, a blow to the head, half that hard, could have and should have killed you or left you with a severe traumatic brain injury. He said you collapsed everything above and below that temple, and your whole right eye socket I had to rebuild out of screws and the big plate up here. So he said you're lucky to, one, be here, but two, be here and have your mind.
Well, that's where you earned your nickname at the beginning. Miracle Matt, right? After that accident.
Yeah. People started calling me Miracle Matt then. And one thing that hit me really hard as a friend on Nike, he hit his head on a half-pipe snowboarding. Yeah. Kevin Pierce, and he hit his head on the snow.
Yeah.
And I had just hung out with him like 2 weeks before his accident, and then mine wasn't long after that. And watching him go through traumatic brain injury and watching his personality shift and the struggles his family had, it really was almost like this survivor's guilt, because it was like, man, he was on snow, I was on rocks. Like, I had every reason to come out of that so much worse. He didn't even actually break, his bones didn't break, but even just that hit left him, to this day, he has major challenges because of it. And so you almost deal with this, like, why me in this, you know, why did I make it through, and trying to be thankful for the time you have. Which kind of, looking back, like you say, my first, obviously there's something coming.
There's something coming here. I don't want to like
but like
give away the secret here. But
looking back, I don't know if I would have had that accident if I would have entered the accident that did change my life forever in the same way. Because 8 months later, after my wake skate accident, I went back to that contest and was the first guy to go from unqualified, because there's only 3 wildcard spots, to the 6-man super final.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a testament of like me being a good rider. I didn't feel like it was a testament of like the restoration that had taken place.
Yeah.
You know, I went from 8 months ago walking with a walker, and then a cane for months, and not being able to open my mouth for 3 months, and just drinking liquids not through a straw because my nasal passages couldn't handle suction. So literally pouring food in my mouth for 3 months.
So gnarly. That's what I love about this story. It's like the first story is so gnarly. Like, most people would have probably given up there. At what point was the next big kind of
so
battle?
the next big battle 2 years later.
What was going on in those 2 years, like, between?
So those 2 years, like I said, like I learned so much about my perspective of myself, of kind of how we move through challenges, my view of God. I am a person of faith. Like, everything in my world kind of shifted in my worldview. Yeah. And kind of realizing that we need to take ownership of our challenges, and that we can kind of decide how we navigate through those, without giving too much away. So yeah, I guess I had learned a lot about myself and a lot about challenges through that process. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier, that I'm thankful for that first accident. Because 8 months later, I was fully restored physically. Yeah. Like, I was back to me physically, but
you were wake skating and stuff still.
Yeah, but like, emotionally, spiritually, and just, I guess my maturity level was way different. Like, I kind of was a different person at the end of it. And it kind of prepared me for what would happen next. My wife was an administrative assistant at the church, and she knew the trees along the sidewalk needed to be trimmed. And I'm like, yeah, I know how to drive and construction equipment, you know, I could get up in a high reach. So I got up in this bucket, not knowing arborists and tree trimmers and linemen use fiberglass insulated buckets. So we rented this bucket, and I got up there and I was trimming trees, and it was 3 days into it. And one minute I was up in the bucket, next I was coming out of a coma, and I just kind of woke up confused and didn't really know where I was or what was going on, and they said, Matt, you've been electrocuted, which was a huge shock. You know?
This guy, huge shock.
No, but the power from the power line that powered this whole 4-story building is a huge church, arced over nearly 20 feet or so through the air and grounded to that bucket.
Is that like a normal thing? Like, does it happen?
So they say, like, you know, arcs can occur up to 50 feet with a strong enough ground. The example they gave me is if you take a vacuum cleaner, when it like unplugs in your vacuum and you go to plug it back in with that switch on, you'll see a little spark. Well, that's like 100 volts jumping a half inch. You take 14 to 21,000 volts and you put a big metal ground in there, it'll arc. Especially, it was a Florida kind of summery day, a lot of humidity in the air helps facilitate that. And so, you know, they did this small like documentary that's coming out on my story, and you say 14 to 20,000 volts, and the amperage is just numbers to people. So we wanted something relatable, and we worked with the power company engineers and said, you know, is there a statistic for surviving this? And they called us about a week later and said, there's no statistic that we can even find of surviving this much amperage and voltage moving through your body, but at a minimum, what moved through your body is as if we hooked you up to 6 electric chairs and flipped them all on. So we don't really know why you're here.
So basically, you're saying is you should be dead.
I mean, the original electric chairs ran 2,000 volts.
Okay, so you had 20,000.
And I had like 14 to 20,000. It was a 3-phase main line that powered this church, and there was 2 burn marks on 2 of the wires, and they said if the third line's involved, it's 20. If not, it's 12.3 to ground. So, like, you know, between 12 and 20 definitely went through you. And that third line was probably involved. They just didn't have the visible burn from when it held. So I was kind of holding the controls of the machine, and you can kind of see on my scars the electricity kind of flowed through here and kind of worked through my chest. I have all these burns, and it's actually just like if you touch right there, Patrick, you'll see that's just rib cage.
Oh,
it's just
rib,
just
straight
rib,
to the
like,
rib.
Burned through. A lot of people don't know what 4th and 5th degree burns are.
Because the burns are inside, right?
3rd degree is what you hear about a lot, but 3rd is where it burns through the layers of skin. 4th, it burns through the muscle, and 5th, it starts burning bone. And even in a small concentrated area like on your arm, if not amputated, a 5th degree burn is almost always lethal.
Yeah.
Because your muscles turn into toxic filters, and your kidneys and heart just fill up with this toxic blood in it.
And you had 5th degree burns.
Yeah, and I had 4th and 5th degree all over. They had to remove part of my sternum bone, and my clavicle and ribcage was exposed. Bobby was at the scene, actually, and she said it was like looking at almost like an A&P book from school, or like an X-Men comic, where she said they didn't know what happened. They saw me on the floor of the bucket. They saw blood all over the ground, and all 4 tires to that high reach had popped and were melted to the concrete.
They grounded it.
So at first they were like, was he struck by lightning? And then they saw the power was out and transformer had exploded. And they're like, oh my gosh, he got electrocuted. And the computer was fried in the high reach, so they said it took about 10 minutes before they could relieve the pressure and drop the bucket. But they said I would come to and kind of flail, and they could just see. They said they could see my whole rib cage clean on the left side. They could see my sternum and clavicle, and everywhere else was just muscle.
Just imagine like a horror movie.
And it was just like, yeah, you're almost wondering why I wasn't bleeding out, but it kind of cauterized all the edges.
Because the burn.
Yeah, but my skin was just gone. June 25th, I came out in September, so it's about 3 months, just over 3 months.
And that's just literally in the bed.
Mm-hmm. I was in ICU and trauma step down, and I kind of got out earlier than I should. Like, I kept begging them to let me go. So I got out, and I maybe spent like a week home and then went back for surgery and spent like another week and a half, 2 weeks there. So the first year was a lot of in and out of the hospital, but the first stay was just over 3 months.
And I mean, obviously most people, like you told me earlier that they were just telling, I think you signed a living will.
Yeah.
They're like, he's not going to make it. Like,
yeah, when I came out of the coma, they basically said I had less than a % chance to live, and that they would keep me comfortable. My first real conversation I remember was I had this goo on my eyes. I see just kind of blurry images of people in the room, and then there was just this one guy, and he was in a white coat, and I was like, this isn't good. He's a doctor. And he said, Matt, we're not supposed to do this like this, but if you're in there and if you can hear me, we're going to bring an alphabet board in soon, and we're going to point to letters, and I want you to try to communicate back by blinking or wiggling a finger, and anything you have to communicate to your loved ones, you need to, because you don't have any skin on your chest and arms, and the burns are very deep, and it's toxic to your bloodstream. And at some point in the next few hours or few days, you're going to move towards septic. And once you fully go septic, you'll have about 4 to 6 hours, and there's nothing we can do. And I remember thinking to myself, because nothing prepares you for that moment.
Yeah.
And it was
4
just
to 6
like,
hours.
Yeah. And I remember just thinking, like, man, Doc, have you ever considered switching to counseling? Because your people skills are like through the roof. But no, it was kind of this reality of nothing does prepare you to face your mortality. And like I said, my faith played a big role into that, because it was like, okay, if I believe there is life after this, then, you know, kind of what do I have to fear? And even if there's not, even if I'm wrong, how do I want to be remembered?
Yeah.
If I have a couple days, like, do I want to be, hey, Matt was scared and not himself at the end, or do I want to be me and pour into my loved ones and be all of who I am right to the end? I kind of just waited to die and then never did.
Your wife was pregnant
Mm-hmm.
at the time.
She was 4 months pregnant with our first, and
so obviously that's a whole other like aspect. Like,
I mean, she's my hero, because I remember her first thought when they told her, like, hey, if he somehow lived, which he won't, he's completely brain dead. Like, he's a different Matt. You know, he won't be your husband. She said her first thought was this kind of picture of us sitting on a front porch, like on rocking chairs at like 90, and her kind of telling me about her day and just kind of spoon feeding me and hoping a little bit of me was still in there. And I think, man, like, I look at our country's divorce rate is just so high, and like when she said for better or for worse, she meant it. Like, this worse was way worse than she ever anticipated.
So you get out of the hospital, you've got to make the decision, like, do you want to be successful from here? Do you want to just lay in bed and
yeah, like one of my favorite quotes is, wherever you are, there you are.
Yeah. And
it's so simple, but it's not easy to live out. Like, it's simple to understand that. Like, obviously I'm here, but I work with like everyone from wounded warriors to, you know, trauma victims to cancer patients, and one of the just recurring themes when people face adversity is this almost non-acceptance of where they are and the reality of the situation. It's, you know, sometimes it's anger, sometimes it's, you know,
blame.
It's like, oh, if that drunk driver didn't run the red light, and it's like, look, even if he comes here and gets on his knees and says, you're right, I'm an idiot, I'm sorry, you're still in the chair.
Yeah.
So just you coming to terms with, okay, here's my reality, here's my present, me dwelling or focusing on the past or what I could have done different doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, here's I am, what does moving forward look like? And for me, it was realizing, like, okay, for one, in the beginning, I'm dying. And here I am, so what am I doing with the time left? And then once I knew I wasn't going to die, or probably wasn't going to die, it was like, okay, well, what's next? And then getting out of the hospital, it was this reality of that, look, I'm in a ton of pain. I'm in pain, I'm in surgeries, in and out like crazy. And in the past 4 years, I've had over 70 operations, which is crazy, but I've had over 70 operations, been under anesthesia 26 times since I got out. And it's kind of this idea of, we're rotating the tires, let's change the oil. Like, it's hard to get doctors to work together, but when you've gone under as much as I have, they're like, all right, we're going to put him under, we'll do this shoulder surgery, this bone graft on his, you know, on his wrist, and this skin release. I do 3 or 4 surgeries at a time. But, okay, so I'm in pain, I'm recovering, and I could sit and be miserable on my couch and disability, or I could be in pain trying to make a difference, trying to pour into others. And so that's what I started sharing my story and speaking, and it's been amazing where it's taken me. The most recurring theme I see when somebody loses somebody or goes through challenge is the why question. Like, why did this happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to sit there and be like, oh, why did I go do that? Why did I cut the tree?
Why did I do this? Why did I do that?
Yeah.
Or why did it happen? Because they want meaning. And sometimes the sad reality is the why is, you know, somebody looked down to send a text and swerved and killed your loved one. That's the why. There's not this big, they died because of this big reason that's going to, like, impact. Like, sometimes the why is a stupid reason. So as soon as we can let go of the why and say, what's next? What's funny is we almost get meaning. We almost get a why. And that's kind of, for me, it was like, just, who cares? Why it happened, whether it was this big grand plan that whatever, or because scientifically you get a piece of metal a certain distance away, it's going to arc every time. Like, whatever the reason doesn't really matter. But me saying what's next, kind of, you know, I get to go and I share my story, and then people open up about stuff like, hey, I never told anyone this, but I was abused as a child, or things they've carried for 20 years, 30 years that they've never processed, they've just bottled, and they start sharing, and I see them take a step towards growth, and it's almost like in me letting go of that why, I get meaning back in what I do.
I think that's really kind of an interesting way to look at it too, because obviously, when something good happens in life, like we don't really question it.
Yeah.
Like when your son's born, you're not like, oh, why did this happen to me? Why did my son born? If something bad happens, all we do is question why. It's easy to sit here and look in hindsight and like, oh man, if I wouldn't have left the house at a certain time, if I wouldn't have done this at a certain time. But then when the good stuff happened, nobody sits around and wonders why.
It's funny too, like how that blame shifts. So much of life is ownership and taking ownership of your challenges, and I feel like people want to blame their challenges, but when they do good things, they want to be self-proclaimed.
Yeah.
Like if they make it, if they have a success story, they're like, look at me, self-made, did it all on my own, nobody helped me get here. But then something bad happens and they're like, God, why'd you do this? Or why did you hit me? And it's just like, why don't we take ownership of the bad too? Why do we only take ownership of the good? People are like, okay, man, I get it. Like I need to take a step towards healing. But what if you're so engulfed that you can't see the other side? There's a lot of people out there with amazing stories. There's people who've overcome cancer and lost limbs, and why isn't everybody a speaker? And why do a lot of people try to be a speaker and fail? And it's because just because you have a great story doesn't mean you can deliver it well.
Yeah.
And like, so for me in my craft, it's putting time into saying, okay, success leaves clues. Like, and that's what you do. Study who is a better day trader than you. And what can you learn from them? So to me, I look at, okay, who are the best speakers in the world? How do they take an audience on a journey? Like, because it's like, show me, Les Brown always says, show me a natural speaker, show me a natural heart surgeon.
Yeah.
Like it is a polished craft of, okay, what is my goal? How am I taking them there? Because it's not just about information.
Yeah.
I would love to tell you that I'm this talented athlete, but I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm just a regular guy. And the reason I went pro was a simple story my dad told me. He said, Matt, have you ever heard the story of Roger? And he said, for hundreds of years, people measured the time it took to run a mile. And everybody knew it was impossible to run it in under 4 minutes. In May 1954, Roger Bannister runs a sub 4-minute mile. And within 6 years, by 1960, we had 30 people do it. Since then, we've had hundreds of people do it. We've had some talented high school runners do it. And I remember thinking to myself, like, well, wait a minute, Dad. Like, leg technology didn't get any better. Like, it's just running.
Yeah.
So what is it that made it never happen until 1954, and then 6 years later, 30 people did it? And it's like, sometimes we're too busy looking around at everybody else instead of realizing our biggest limitation is right here.
Yeah.
And that's what you did with your YouTube. You're like, oh, if I can get 2,000. Like, you never even, 100,000 wasn't there.
No.
50,000, 10,000 wasn't there.
I wanted 1,000.
You were setting these limits that could possibly slow down the growth.
Yeah.
Because you're like, if I can get 2,000, then the coolers kick on, and you're like, I'm at 1,000, I did it.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. Like, what's next? And so as a 14-year-old kid, I heard that story, and I was just a kid who liked to skateboard and snowboard and wakeboard and wake skate. And I remember going, wait a minute, I don't have to be a kid who likes to wake skate. I could take like something like running that we teach to be so physical is obviously more mental, and I could do that in my sport. I don't have to be a kid who just likes to wake skate. I could be a kid who changes wake skating. So I went out and I started to try tricks that I had never done and nobody else in the world had ever done. And before I knew it, like I broke through these barriers mentally. I did it on the trampoline, cross-trained. And then I'd go out and I'd truly get in the mindset that like, okay, I'm trying the first ever wake-to-wake double kickflip, the first ever underflip, the first ever whatever it is. And I'd be like, man, this is a beginner trick. Everybody does it. It's like learning to get up. It's a part of the process, and it's no big deal. I do them all the time.
Yeah.
And before I knew it, I had a handful of tricks nobody could do, and I got a call from a small company in Oregon called Nike, and they're like, hey, we're starting this 6.0 thing, and I was the first athlete on 6.0. When they started doing contracts, they'd been giving gear out to kids, but I'd love to tell you it was because I was talented. But it wasn't. I changed my thinking. I changed the limitations I set in here, and it changed my life.
When people started doing kickflips for the first time, it was like once someone did a kickflip, everybody started doing kickflips. Just like a human thing of like, it's possible.
I think it's suddenly this. I think our subconscious is so much stronger than our conscious mind, and we think something's impossible. And as soon as somebody does it, like Roger Bannister runs the 4-minute mile, and there are people out there who beat him in races, who saw him come up, and they're like, "Wait, Roger did it? I could do that. I beat Roger." Like, and it's suddenly the impossible becomes possible, and it changes everything.
Yeah.
And I love the point you said, like, nobody sees 1,000 attempts, I visit a lot of burn victims.
Yeah.
And I'll go into the hospital and somebody go, man, I got 3rd-degree burns. I'm locked up like this. I can't believe how deep your scars are and the fact that you have the range of motion you do.
Yeah.
And it's like, they think of it as like, you're lucky. And it's like, no. Like the physical therapy 5 times a week I did driving to Tampa.
One saw that, yeah.
Like I drove to Tampa 5 days a week, 3 to 5 days a week to do an hour session, 2 hours each way almost, the driving. And people are like, that's a lot. And it's like, no, that's where you learn your exercises. Where this happens, it's thousands of hours at home.
Yeah.
It's putting a movie on and putting a weight in your hand. And I got to the hospital, I was locked up less than 90 degrees at both elbows. My shoulders are like this, my neck was like this. But I knew if I ever wanted to get back on the water or have range of motion, you have a year till that scar tissue matures, and then it's like trying to stretch plastic.
Yeah.
So I was like, if I want to be where I want to be, I have to be able to put the work in now.
Yeah.
And so many people want to be where you are, maybe with YouTube, but they're not willing to put the work in that you've done. They're not willing to do what you've done to be where you are. And,
I think it's like a humility thing too. Like a lot of people are scared to be wrong.
Yeah.
You know, like they're scared
to
fail because they don't want to put their neck out there. They don't want people to say, "Oh, you failed." You know, your videos are terrible.
Yep.
And I think that's probably one of the coolest things with you. I'm sure every doctor told you, "Hey, you're not going to do all these things."
Yeah.
And then once you started doing those things, you're like, "Hey, I'm doing it." You know,
that's
you're never going to be on the water again. And Matt was out there early on the surfboard cruising around with his son, with the dog. I'm like, just back to normal. You know, like nothing ever happened.
You can't grow muscle cells. Like, think if you see a skinny guy, it's like a deflated balloon.
Yeah.
He can grow that balloon, but once you remove the muscle, that's why it's just bone on top of my ribcage.
Yeah.
So I've had my pectoral majors surgically removed. A lot of this bicep is removed. You can kind of see how it's like comes in here. There's this bone here. There's some left here though. So the doctors told me that they're like, you'll get functional, you'll hold your child, but you'll never weight skate again. You'll never do a push up or a pull up. And I remember as soon as I did my first pull up, texting my doctor that video and being like, look, I still got back and shoulder and like the body's amazing and how it can compensate. It's like my arm, like this scar used to go straight across.
Yeah.
And the only reason this comes in with regular skin is because I would sit there and stretch it till it bled and just literally break open the scar. Ugh. And then the next day do it again and do it again. It would heal wider and wider and wider. But like I said, it was, it literally was like being tortured. You're making yourself breaking your skin open daily, but knowing like that drive of like, if I ever want to be on the water, I need to be able to stretch my arm out and hold onto the rope without it ripping my arm open. So, how do I what am I willing to do?
The most rewarding thing for me is like proving people wrong. Someone says I can't run a mile, I'm gonna go run a mile. Nothing like that. But like,
it's not
my
macho.
personal goals.
Yeah, it's not macho. Like I have to prove to them.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I know I want to be functional one day. So he says I'll never do a pull up again, and I want to do a pull up because I want to do a pull up, not because I want to be macho or prove him wrong. Like I could care less what people think. If people think like, hey, the thing you're doing is the coolest thing ever, or hey, it's the lamest thing ever, I don't really care. Like if it's something I'm passionate about and love to do, I want to do that. So it's not about this acceptance. And I think a huge important issue you just touched on when you said it's not that I want a bunch of money, I want to enjoy my life.
Yeah.
And so many people, you ask them like, what do you want from life? I want to be successful. Okay, well if I put 10 of you in a room and say define success, write it down on a piece of paper, I'm going to get 10 different definitions. So first of all, it's like we want this thing that maybe we don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
So it's like you push them like, I want to be successful. Okay, well what is success to you? Is it status? Is it money? Is it a certain amount of money? What is your definition of success? And then, okay, well, if I could make this much money. Okay, so nobody wants a big pile of green things.
Yeah.
So it's not about that much money. So what does that much money represent to you? Is it you want freedom to be able to do the things you want? Is it you want status? You want acceptance from your friends? You want certain things that'll make you happy? And then, okay, well, why do those things make you happy versus these things? So it really diving into almost the 2-year-old why of like why? Why do you want that, and what does that mean?
I always try to like really push people on the idea that when I say like I want to be rich, or this is what rich is, or this is what success is, every single person defines their own success. Mm-hmm. If you want to be a redneck who's a double wide and lives on the side of a river, and you want to make $10,000 a year, that's your happiness.
That's your success.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
I have no judgment against you.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna be like, oh, dude, that guy's poor, because he's over there eating crawdads and drinking beers all day and having a good life. Yeah. And I think that's like, I always try to stress that. At the end of the day, like, I don't want people to see my story and be like, oh, Patrick did this and made this much money and had bought a boat and lived like this, now he's happy.
Yeah.
Because that might not make somebody else happy.
Yeah, a lot of people, they're scared of the water. Why would they want a boat? And for you to know where you're moving, because if you're just generally trying to move forward but you don't know where forward is, like it's never going to be enough. So for, like you said, push people to understand what is that represent to them. Like if somebody asked me, Matt, what does financial success look like to you? To me, the definition of success financially is when your passive income overtakes your expenses, is more. So if you can live on $20,000 a year and you got a rental home that makes $20,000 a year, you're successful. You can literally retire and stop doing stuff. And maybe it's a little morbid from having 2 near-death accidents, but as much as I love speaking and it's given me an awesome life, I tell my wife, I say, I don't care if I make an extra 50 grand a year speaking or $1 million a year speaking. At the end of the day, it's a job.
Yeah.
Because I'm only making money when I'm on stage. So if I go into the hospital for a long period of time again, if something is going on with my organs from the electrocution that we didn't catch, like, and I have to stop speaking and our income stops, like, I enjoy what I do, but my focus is that passive income of, hey, I want to get to the point where I can afford the lifestyle I want to live while I'm sleeping.
Do you think having those near-death experiences changed your kind of outlook on life success, or still kind of similar? Like,
for
do
sure.
you value money less? You're like, I don't really care about making millions of dollars. I just want to be able to live happy, raise my sons, like, and enjoy life, you know?
It definitely changes your perspective of time with people and with the people that matter in your life and with the people who are maybe in your life, but they just are because they always have been.
Yeah.
So you start to reanalyze all your relationships of like, hey, you know, what do I really value? If I really value my relationships with my kids and my wife and these group of friends or these group of family, but I hang out with these people all the time just because just kind of always have. It's like, what am I and there's a really interesting Barna study done. Like if you are, I mean, there's a trading channel. So, that says if you take your closest 10 people to you and average their income, your income is usually within $10,000 either direction. And it's not that millionaires only want to hang out with millionaires and people who make $200,000 want to hang out with it's like, it's not that. But if you're a kid who grew up in Beverly Hills and all your friends make 700 grand and up, and you're the kid making 100, you feel like, man, I'm barely getting by. Like I'm living on my parents' couch. I can't afford rent around here. And you have this kind of subconscious want to raise up to the minimum level of what you think is acceptable. And I would say people don't get what they want, they get what they believe. Like everybody wants a better job, wants more money, wants more time off, but whatever you truly believe at your core is your minimum, that's what you'll make. You know, if you're like, man, I really wish I made 60,000, but the minimum that's okay with you is 30, you'll make 30, I promise. You'll make what you believe. So to analyze, like, who's that intentional inner circle that you're saying, hey, I want to be around people that are moving me in the direction I want to move, that I'm learning from and growing from. And if I'm the smartest person in the room, I need a new room. Like,
you gotta look at it like, is it better for me to spend my time with this person who just causes issues? You know, when I'm with him, am I a better person? Or if I'm with her or whatever it is, do they raise me up instead of bring me down? Because, you know, you can find friends that sometimes, you know, pull you down in
super negative,
you know,
outlook,
different addictions or whatever. You know, if you have an addiction, the last thing you want to do is be with somebody who fuels that addiction. You know,
to me, I think everything rises and falls on leadership. So it's like if I look at somebody and I look at their life and I'm like, that's what I want. They are moving in the direction of the way I want to move. Even just to be able to say, hey, can I have lunch with you and just kind of pick your brain and be like, hey, man, your kids turned out awesome. And I got a bunch of friends who their kids rebelled and were just like crazy and they have bad relationships with them. Like, how did you have 3 or 4 kids and they all turned out to be good apples kind of thing? Like, what did you do? And success leaves clues, and just saying, like, you know, what do you know that I should know? And what did you do that I should do? And learning from people, and you'll build relationships with people that are like-minded and moving where you want to move.
We talked about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we did.
I'm pretty excited to go home and kind of just actually watch some of this stuff. I feel like we got really deep without even knowing it. I mean, that's life sometimes. You just get deep without knowing it.
You go in deep into fun situations and tough situations, and I mean, my company is called Beyond the Burn because we all have burns. My scars are my arms, and you guys can all see them, but the stuff you guys are going through, whether it's financial, emotional, relational, whatever it is, like, we all have burns, we all have scars, and what are we doing with those?
Yeah. If people want to find out more about you, kind of what's the best way to find out?
My Instagram, I try to keep pretty updated on what's going on in my life and trying to get better. I had a filmer last year and was better. I need to get content out more.
I'll put a link down below.
If you want to throw a link to my website, just people could read about the story more.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I think, and you got a documentary coming out, right?
Mm-hmm.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
Short doc.
Learn more about the battle.
And
the wolf within.
And we have the Battle of the Rain in the audio.
How have you've had like so many nicknames. The Wolf Within, the Miracle Man.
Yeah, that's kind of where the new logo came from. It's kind of a wolf type logo.
I see that, yeah, but kind of merging, you know?
I kind of want people to question, like, wait, what is that? Is that a wolf, or is that two flames, or is it two M's? And it's like, I don't know, it's like the Nike swoosh. Nobody really knows what it is, but it's cool.
I just looking at it. That's all that matters. Yeah. So, hey.
Thanks
for having me over. Had a lot of fun, as always. So I will put a link down below. Check out Matt's story. It's an epic one, to say the least. So talk to you guys later on.
Later, guys.